We're talking about today. Change can be scary, and I can't remember, but I think the title is something about what do you do when the world falls apart. And last week we talked a little bit about it, sort of set it up so that we could get to some punchlines. And so that's what we're going to get to today. By punchlines, I mean, the meat of what can we really do when something like that happens. When we feel like the sky perhaps is falling on us. And I think initially we have to make some just basic decisions. And let me begin by just talking about some of those decisions. One decision you have to make, and we mentioned last week some of the challenges that some people here may be having, or people you may know may be having. Challenges often come dealing with relationships, or dealing with jobs, dealing with career, dealing with health issues, many things. And one decision you have to make when things begin to get shaky, when your life feels like it's not working exactly the way you thought it would, one decision you have to make is you have to decide, are you going to just kind of take care of things by yourself, or are you going to try to get some help? And so that's the first decision you come to. The decision is, do you fix it yourself, or do you reach out and get some help? And I'm not going to say a lot about these decisions, but these are things I hope that you'll think about, reflect on these, and see what you normally do. Because I'm going to give you some sort of A-B choices here. And as you look at those, you probably tend to go one way or the other. Most of us do. And so reflect on these and see where you might be falling. So the first one is, do you fix it yourself or do you get help? The second decision we come into is the idea, do we, let me see what I was going to say. Do you take action or do you study? Now probably, see, I'm the type of guy who if something comes up, the first thing I want to do is study a bit. I want to kind of research it, but a lot of people don't research at all. They just make a snap decision, and that often turns out to work out well. And so we face those kinds of decisions. And the third decision we have to make is, do we go with the flow or do we resist? Now, a lot of people go with the flow. Someone was talking, their floor was ruined because there was a leak, or maybe your car's not working, or maybe you lost your job, or maybe somebody else, their roof was leaking. And so, all kinds of things can happen. And so when that happens, some people really immediately want to take action, do something about it, and other people just kind of go with the flow. People are mad at me, but that's all right. I don't really care. I mean, it's no big deal. It's raining on my parade, but I'm not going to get excited about it. I just roll with the punches, whatever happens. So that's how some people maneuver through life, while other people immediately jump in the boat and begin to paddle upstream. Which means they're into resistance. They're resisting all the time. Even if nothing's wrong, they're still resisting. And so they build a lot of muscles that way, but they also build a lot of tension as well. And so when it comes down to it, we probably have a habitual way that we deal with issues and we deal with problems. There was a beautiful Buddhist nun, Pema Chödrön. You may have read some of her books, but her writing is beautiful. And in one of her books, she's talking about her teacher, Trungpa Rinpoche. Say Rinpoche for me. Rinpoche. That's a nice name, Rinpoche. If I were having another kid, Rinpoche Turner. I think that would be really nice. But she tells a story of the teacher, and several other men were with him, and they were traveling to a Buddhist monastery, and they had walked many miles already, and when they had gotten close, there was a crazy, insane, ferocious guard dog there with huge teeth tied to the gate. And so they were about 20 yards away, and this dog looked like it just wanted to consume them. And about that time, the chain broke, and the dog started running toward them, high rate of speed. Well, now see, that's like your world begins to kind of flash before you. So what would you do? Some people would freeze. Some people would begin to yell for help, and that's what several of these men did. The other thing you could do, depending on if you go with the flow, if you don't go with the flow, if you resist, you could run. You could run as fast as you possibly could run. Rinpoche saw the dog coming and immediately started to run as fast as he possibly could go toward the dog. And the dog was shocked, stunned, and it just stopped and, put its tail between its legs and turned around and ran away whimpering. Well, sometimes the best thing you can do when you're facing a problem, when your world begins to fall apart, is look it right in the eye and go after it with everything you've got. Sometimes that's the best thing to do. On the other hand, sometimes it's not the best thing to do. Some people deny when bad things happen. They deny it. The doctor tells you, well, you've got this, and we just deny it. And it might surprise you to know that you and I probably are some of the best people in the world that do that. We deny things. And sometimes denying things is a good way to go. But then on the other hand, if a dog is running at you and he's about to bite you, probably denying it is not a good idea. And so see, that's the tricky part. Sometimes it's best to get help. Sometimes it's best just to take action. Sometimes it's best to go with the flow, and sometimes it's best to resist it with everything you've got. And that's what makes it complex. I was listening to a guy who was a minister, Douglas Kraft, who I enjoy some of the things he says, but he said something this week that I thought was funny, because he said he was talking to a friend of his who was a minister, and he said, how do you deal with all the ministerial issues? How do you deal, this was a large church kind of thing, and he said, how do you deal with all the issues and all the people that have so many issues and problems? And he said, denial has served me well. And so denial sometimes does work really well. Sometimes big groups, sometimes people, even in small groups, although it doesn't happen here, of course, but it can happen in small spiritual groups where people begin to bicker, people begin to fight. And sometimes the best thing to do is just ignore it. Because if you ignore things like that, often they just go away. And so looking at those strategies, wouldn't it be great to know which strategy would be the very best to use? And see, that's the trick. Because it's not like one size fits all. It's not like I can say, well, this is exactly what you need to do. And so it'd be great if we could. And it would seem like maybe that's the reasonable way to go. But when our world begins to fall apart, when we feel shaken, often we're not all that reasonable or rational anyway. Let me give you 2-3 questions to sort this out, then I want to get into the heart of what I want to say today. One question, and it may surprise you because you may think you would already know this, but when your world begins to fall apart, the first question I think you want to ask is exactly what is the problem here? Because life is so complex, and I see it happen all the time. People will tell me a story about their lives, about why life isn't working. And they may cover 10 issues and never really cover the real problem. And so it's important to stop and to pause and ask, when your world begins to feel like it's going to crumble, before you do anything, maybe it's best to stop and say exactly what is this problem that's taking place. Because you can push some of the other things aside and get to the heart of the issue. And a second question I suggest is you ask, is it fixable? Is it fixable? My life, your life might be better if there's no financial downturn, but you're not going to fix that this afternoon. Maybe I wish my parents could be better parents, or wish my kids could be better kids, but there's no way that I can rewire their brains today and make that happen. And besides, when you really begin to look at it, maybe it's you that needs the rewiring anyway. You know what I mean? And so you have to ask, is this something I can fix? Because if it's nothing you can fix, you don't want to really just waste your time running it over and over in your head. And the third thing is, does the problem need to be fixed, or does it just need some attention? A friend of mine said his dog died. Yes. And when he said his dog died, you think, well, what kind of help do you need? And he said, I don't need any help. I don't need anything to be fixed. But I would like to talk about it. And the key is, he didn't need anybody to fix the problem. He didn't even need to fix the problem because you couldn't fix the problem. But he did need some attention so that he could talk about it, and sometimes it happens just like that. If you see me sometime and I'm carrying, and I thought of this, if I'm carrying, because I have a lot of books, Mary Pat will tell you that. I have a lot of books, and sometimes I'll box the books up, and I brought several of them here. If you see me carrying boxes of books, you may sympathize with me, how hard that is. But it'd be much better if you just lend me a hand. You know what I mean? And so sometimes what we have to do when our world is falling apart, sometimes we can do something. Sometimes you can't really do much, but maybe you could at least talk to somebody or find somebody to listen. Or if somebody else is going through the same thing, you could do the same thing with them. The fourth question, then I want to get into the heart of the issue. The fourth question is, am I really addressing the situation? And I think that's a real key. When your world begins to fall apart, you have all kinds of emotion. Am I really addressing the situation? I don't know if you've done this, but maybe I face some kind of issue and I come up with a plan, and it's a complex plan. It's like, do A, B, C, D, E, and then it's going to all work out. And then maybe I talk to Mary Pat or someone else and find out all the plan that I've designed doesn't really even address the heart of the issue that I'm dealing with. Although I spent hours putting that plan together. And so you want to make sure that you're dealing with what's really happening. There's a Buddhist group that the monks are very dedicated, and they live by 227 rules, 227 precepts. And I read that a couple of weeks ago, and then I wondered what kind of rules would they have. Here's one of them. A monk does not spread his robe on the ground and invite a dancing girl to dance on it while clapping his hands, yelling, "Go, baby, go." Now, what does that tell me? It tells me 2,500 years ago, something happened. And so something happened, and what they did was, instead of dealing with the real issue, they got together and said, let's create a rule. And see, we do that. We do that with our kids. We do it in life. If we're faced with a situation, we might come up with rules. But you and I have to remember that people are always more important than rules. I think about Jesus, in John chapter 8, and the woman was caught in adultery, and she was brought there, and the guys were saying, what do we do? Should we stone her? And what they were doing is taking rules, laws, and beating this woman with those rules. And so sometimes we do that. Sometimes we create rules because we're having difficulty. Maybe we lost a job, and so instead of dealing with how to do something about it, we say, well, we need to make some rules that, we're never going to do this again, we'll never do this again, we'll never do that again. And we create all these things which really doesn't address the issue at all. Okay. I had that to say. Then I thought, well, that doesn't really get into the real stuff. And so then last night I thought, I need some real stuff. So here's the real stuff. And once I wrote down the real stuff, it's kind of cool because there were 6 things. And they all begin with the same letter. And I didn't do that on purpose. It just happened. Well, 5 of them begin with the same letter. I had to twist one, but if you got 5 things out of 6 with the same letter, you got something going on. So let me share these, because when we get caught in a world and the world is being shaken, everything's falling apart, these are 6 things that we can do that will change what happens in our lives. So here they are. If you're going to write things down, this is the things you would want to write down. And the first thing I suggest you write down is the word competent. Because I believe our world falls apart because it's helping us to become competent. 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 And so remember, when everything in your world falls apart, listen now, when everything falls apart, you've got to still look in the mirror and say, there are still possibilities open to me. I still have potential. And so the bad news is everything in my life has radically changed. And the good news is everything in my life has radically changed. And the double good news is it's going to continue to change. And so that means you open to the possibility. Because often the reason our world is shaken is because the world needs more of you. Spirit needs more of you. Spirit needs qualities to come out of you. And they're not coming out. I mean, you got everything going. You're laying back on the couch. You're doing your thing. And so those qualities aren't emerging. But then when the world begins to shake, you'll begin to produce those beautiful God qualities. And so that's the truth. Our greatest growth often comes when things like that happens. So in the midst of change, you have a choice. In the midst of change, you can be a prisoner, you can be a victim, you can become cynical, or you can become a learner. The best position to be in when everything's falling around you is to be willing to learn. It is to be a beginner. It is to say, okay, everything's falling apart. That means something good is coming. And I'm going to learn what it is. The best way you and I learn is if we're outside the comfort zone. And the best way to get knocked out of your comfort zone is when everything falls apart. And so that's exactly how life works. Things fall apart because life needs more of you. And so that's why we ask good questions. We don't say, why is this happening to me again? Because if you ask that, you're going to get bad answers. The quality of your questions, quality questions will produce a quality life. And so you've got to ask good questions, like you would ask, what's good in this situation? I know there's something good. What's good in this? And what am I willing to do to get it the way I want it to be? And what can I do during this process that I would actually enjoy while that's happening? You want to ask good questions. How can I enjoy the process? Because change will shake up the status quo. Change happens because the world needs more of you and is giving you that opportunity. And so what we want to do is become competent in the change. And the way you become competent is you practice. The way you get good at shooting your bow and arrow is you got to practice. The way you get good at doing anything, you've got to practice. And so the way you get good at this is when things begin to change, you begin to practice. But you've got to, and I don't mean that you're, to imply that you're crazy at all, but don't you hear voices all the time? I mean, voices are going off in my head all the time. They're even talking to me right now. And I bet you anything that they're going off in your head as well. That doesn't mean we're crazy at all. But you've got to manage those voices. And so when the cynical voice speaks, when the voice speaks that puts you down, when the voice speaks that creates doubt, you've got to be able to manage those. If you can't manage the voices, you can't be competent. And so you want to be able to manage those voices because the old voices want to keep you exactly where you are. And they'll say anything to keep you where you are. But when change comes, it brings wind. And the wind is there so you can spread your wings and fly. But you've got to be able to manage the voices and let those voices go. I tell you, the enemy, when things are changing, the enemy isn't out there somewhere. The enemy isn't something you can touch. It's not something you can see. But the enemy, you know what the enemy is? It's your stories. It's the stories you tell yourself. Because those stories limit you and back you into a corner, and they do that every time. Competent. The second word is commitment. Commitment. Say this with me. I am committed to.
I am committed to.
And I don't know what you're committed to, but you've got to choose. I'm committed to something. I'm committed to something. And commitment means that you will do whatever it takes to get the desired result. It doesn't mean that you'll try a little bit and then you stop. Commitment means the word means you cut. It means you cut away all the other things and you commit to that road, that path. So when you do that, it means you're committed no matter what, whatever happens, to get the desired result. And so you don't have a back door. You don't have any ifs, ands, or buts, but you go forward with that kind of commitment. Because if you don't do that, if you don't have commitment, the energy within you dissipates and just goes off in every direction. And you know as well as I do, if energy goes off in every direction, not much is going to happen at all. If you're unclear, and be honest, if you're unclear about what you're committed to, you're going to procrastinate. If you're unclear about your commitment, then you're going to give up. If you're unclear about your commitment, then you're going to stall out when it gets hard. And so you've got to be able to make a declaration that is absolute so that you can say, I'm absolutely committed to this. Everything's falling apart around me, but I'm committed in this direction. And you move in that direction. Third word is community. When things get rough, you want to team up. You don't want to be a lone ranger. You don't want to do it by yourself. You want to couple with other people. You know, it's Jesus who said, when 2 or 3 people are together, then there I am in the midst of them, which means there's tremendous power when people come together. And so community is important. Community is important, but it's important in the sense See, it may surprise you because community isn't important because of what you're going to get from it. Community is important because of what you give to it. And what happens is when community comes up, often, I come into a community and I'm saying, give it to me. Give me some love. Give me some joy. Give me some peace. Give it to me. And if I'm not getting what I want, then I get the hell out of town. And the reason is because my whole attitude is backward. And we've been trained to think that way. So community is vital. There's tremendous power in community. But my power comes from giving. Not from getting. Because the truth is, if I'm trying to get, I never get enough. There's nobody here that can give me all the love I need. But if I turn it around and I'm thinking, how much love can I give? Changes things. Community. What is it, number 3? 4? 3? Here's number 4. Now, I'm going to give you a word. I don't need a word. You need the word because you're going to say, what's that word? So community hopping is not recommended. Word number 4, the word is control. Control. And any psychologist would tell you that you want the locus of control to be where? Inside you. Inside you. You don't want someone else to have control. You want to have control. So you're committed to the community, but at the same time, there's autonomy. You understand what I'm saying? So you have community, yes. You must have it if you're really going to handle situations. But at the same time, you want to be autonomous and you want to have that power within yourself. So no victims, no poor me's, because if that's the road you go down, we get lost in it. If you get anything out of that day, this is it. If everything falls apart, your primary is others. You understand? Your primary is others. It must be others. It must be others. It must be others. Because if it's not others, you'll lose your soul. You'll lose the purpose of this life. If you're trying to save your soul, Master J said you'll lose it. Tony Robbins talks about basic human need. And he talks about, he says there's 6 basic human needs. First one is certainty. All of us like certainty. You know, we like to know the sun's coming up. We like to know we got a job. We like to know we got some money. We like to know that somebody loves us. With certainty. All of us like certainty. We need certainty. Second, if you have too much certainty, you get really bored. And so the second major human need is uncertainty. So, you know, if you like surprises, say yes.
Yes.
Most people like surprises, especially the good surprises. So, certainty, uncertainty, and the third major human need is significance. I want to feel special. I want to feel unique. I want to feel like I make a difference. I want to feel like my life counts for something. Don't you? So significance is very important. Fourthly is love. Everybody wants to be loved. Everybody wants love, but most people don't get it. Most people settle for something else. You know why? Because that song's right. Remember the song? Love hurts. If you've ever been hurt by love, raise your hand. Now, come on. I mean, if you don't raise your hand, I know you're lying. Because love hurts sometimes. So those are the needs. I'll tell you the other 2 in a minute, but those are the 4 personality needs. Those are the 4 basic needs. And let me tell you the deal. We satisfy those 4 needs based on our belief system. Most people's belief system is they must depend on other people to meet those needs. You know, you've heard me use the Latin word before, screwed-ate. And that basically means you're in big trouble. Because if you're depending on other people to make you significant, to help you feel loved, to help you feel certain, to keep your life exciting, you can spell that massive pain. And that's the truth. I spent most of my life trying to get other people to meet my needs. In class, we would actually make a list. Like if you go to, I haven't done this, but if you went to marriage therapy, sometimes in therapy we'll say, well, make a list of your needs. And there's nothing wrong with that if you're trying to discover what's going on inside. But make a list of your needs. And so I'd make a list of my needs, and I give it to Mary Pat, and I say, okay. Hey, I'll give it to Jeff. So you give it to somebody, and you say, meet my needs. And if the person says, no, what are you going to do? Well, you're going to die inside. You're going to go into depression. You're going to have an affair. You're going to give up. Then you get an idea. Ooh, maybe I could trade her in and get another one. This one seems responsive. But then after, 6 months or so, it's not working so well. Then you say, here's my list. And you give your needs again. What I'm telling you is, anytime, when I live my life trying to get other people to meet my needs, when I live my life depending on other people to meet my needs, not only love, but all the others too, I was absolutely miserable. Buddha called that suffering. And so I'm telling you, if that's how you're living, you are living in hell. And nobody is going to come and save you. Nobody's coming on a white horse. Prince, princess, no. And so you're not only thinking about love, but you see those others. Significance. I want to be significant. I want to be special. You've got to develop your belief system so that you meet your own needs. And then when you come into a community, you arrive and you say, I'm here to meet other people's needs. Now, sometimes people give me love. And I go, oh, Sometimes people might say, you helped me in some way. Ooh, significance. Take it in. Somebody might say, you help me be certain about something. Or, you know what I'm saying. They can give you some of these needs. And when they do, take it in. Lap it up like a cat drinking milk. I mean, it's a great thing. But don't expect that. You don't come into a community for that reason. And so back to my original point. What's my original point? When your world is falling down around you, become part of a community. Why? Because there's power in coming together, especially if you come together realizing what a community's for. Because then I'm going to give to Pearlie. I'm going to give to John. I'm going to give. And then as we go along, somebody gives something to me. But my mindset, my primary, is others. I'm telling you, if it's not others, you're going to be in hell. So see, that's really good to know. So commitment, what did I say now? What are the...
Control.
Control. So the control, you want to have your own control. You don't want somebody else controlling you. You don't want to be dependent on anybody else. And the way you meet your needs is totally based on your belief system. So make it easy to feel good. Make it easy. I read some time ago about, and I mentioned this before, Dr. Dean Ornish, who said, he's a heart specialist, and he said, if you have love in your life, then you're much less likely to have heart disease, or at least die of heart disease. Well, what if the guy is married to a woman who's just cold and mean? Well, you might as well say goodbye to him. But see, that's not the point. The point is, how many great lovers do you know? Do you know enough great lovers to entrust your life to those people? To get love isn't the deal. The thing is to have love in your life. And you can have massive love in your life by what? Loving. And then lots of other love comes into you too. And that's just, the icing on the cake. You get all that, but you won't even get that if you're always trying to just get it. That's just pretty good stuff. I mean, that is how it is. It really is how it is. Oh, let me mention the other two needs, and then I'm going to stop. The other two needs. Those first four are personality needs. Now we get into soul needs. Number 5 is growth. If I'm not growing and I have a lot of money, I'm not happy. If I have all this love in my life, but there's no growth, if you're not growing, you're dying. So growth is important. And you can't depend on somebody else to do your growing. You've got to do it. You've got to do it. If you're depending on somebody else, again, you're in trouble. So growth. And you know why I think growth is important? Because if you grow, you have something of value to give. Because it's true. I mean, I don't want to sound corny. Well, let me give you the final one first, and then I'll be corny. The final need is contribution. Contribution for others. Contribution for something beyond you. You may think, well, this is a weird thing to talk about. My world is falling apart, and you're talking about contribution. But that's because that's the way out of the pain. The way out is always others. Always others. You may think it's corny, but living is best when you're giving. Living is best when it's not me, but it's we. That's really true. And so you're giving to something bigger, bigger, bigger. How y'all doing? Let me look at my other words real quick. Those needs, see, that's really important. So as you arrange your belief system, you want to make sure that you're working it out where it's easy to feel love. Make it easy to feel love. Make it easy to feel significant. Make it easy. Make it easy. Word number 5, I just want to give you these. Word number 5 is choice. Don Juan, listen to this. He said, path. He said it just like that. Question mark. Path? You're looking for a path? There ain't no path. You're wasting your time. You make your own path. And you make it by walking. Your life is what it is today because of all these choices that you've made. Path making is made by choices. Say this with me. I always have a choice.
I always have a choice.
And you do. You always have a choice. I don't care what happens. You always have a choice. Now that doesn't mean you always like your choice. Doesn't mean you always love your choice. But if you don't choose, somebody else is going to choose for you. No choice is a choice. So you and I always have a choice. So when your world crumbles, you stand up and you say, next choice, and you make it. And the next choice, and the next choice. And you're making your path as you go. It's a beautiful thing. Energy follows attention. So when you place your attention on your choice, massive energy comes and opens up the world for you. And so, say this. I choose this.
I choose this.
I choose that.
I choose that.
And then the final word is center. 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 When you center, when everything falls apart, you have to get quiet. And when you center, you come into your true self. If you don't become aware, there's going to be all types of demons, I'm just using that word in a figurative way, around you that are going to box you in the head. If you become aware, all of those things dissolve. Awareness is important. So you center yourself. You click your, what do they say, your ruby red slippers?
No place like
You click them together and you say, I'm going home. And that's your power. I'm going home. What is home? Home is the place where I cannot be harmed. Home is the place so that when the whole world looks like it's falling apart, you say, well, I guess that's just how it happens. Because you know eventually everything falls apart, doesn't it? A Buddhist guy said he looked at his glass every day and he said, goodbye, glass. It was his favorite glass, but he said, I know someday it's going to be broken. Everything breaks sooner or later. And so when you center yourself, you come in and you realize, I live forever. But all the relationships, all the physicalness, all these things are going to go. They're going to go. And so you begin to make peace with that. It really does give you a lot of power then. You make peace with that. I mean, you really become autonomous. This Buddha guy was a smart guy. I mean, you know what he said? He said meditate. Man, you need to meditate when everything falls apart. Number 2, you know what he said? He said, be a lamp unto yourself. He said, don't go from person to person or place to place. Be your own light. And then you know what he said, number 3? He said, number 3, don't believe a word I say. He didn't plan to start a religion any more than Jesus did. He said, take what I say and try it out. That's why I love shamanism so much, because my shaman used to say, try it, and if it doesn't work, forget about it. That's what you do. You take these ideas and you try it out. If it doesn't work, you forget about it. Because you don't want to be believing something that your experience hasn't proven to you. Do you? So you center yourself. You get quiet. You know who you are. And this is what happens. You look at the world and you know everything is changing. Then you look at the world and you say everything's falling apart. And then you say, When you center yourself, all is well. And you find that special place. You and I are just like Sid's mother and father. Siddhartha, Buddha. They wanted to protect him from the harshness of life. And we want to do that to those people we love. We want to do it to ourselves. But all of you have lost your innocence. I can look at you and tell. None of us are innocent. You've all seen sickness, and you've seen death, and you've seen it all. And so, even in the midst of that, you can find incredible peace. Honest. Center yourself. Meet your own needs. I feel pretty good. Peace and blessings. Thank you.